Hey everybody, how's it going? Before we get into today's video, I want to ask to see if you're subscribed real quick. If you're not, it's free and it will let you know whenever we post new videos. Without further ado. Commander Lucan Torvath's AR lenses blinked as they adjusted to the massive landing bay of the Galactic Council Station, a place where an important shooting competition would take place. The landing bay was a showcase of advanced engineering. Smooth metallic walls stretching hundreds of meters overhead, dotted with hovering maintenance drones and buzzing with lines of energy that his enhanced vision rendered in electric blue. Quite a sight, isn't it? Liana's voice came through his Neuralink. She stood at his right, dressed in a tailored navy blue uniform that blended formality with elegance. The silver insignia on her chest marked her as a senior diplomat, and subtle embroidery along the cuffs hinted at her rank within the delegation. Her neatly pinned blonde hair and confident stance radiated professionalism, while her hazel eyes seemed to take in every detail of the bustling landing bay. Lucan glanced at her, a faint smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. I'd call it over-engineered. On his left, Cade stood with his arms crossed, his tailored charcoal gray suit fitting perfectly over his broad shoulders. A navy tie and polished shoes completed the image of a composed diplomat, though the constant drumming of his fingers against his thigh hinted at a nervous energy lurking beneath his calm exterior. Cade said, "You'd be right to call it that." The landing bay's atmospheric barrier shimmered as another delegation approached their position. Lucan's lenses automatically tagged and categorized each figure, but the council president needed no identification. Standing over 2 meters tall, High Counselor Valin commanded attention with his pale skin and aristocratic features. His movements were unnaturally fluid, like mercury flowing in humanoid form, draped in robes that seemed to absorb and redirect light in impossible ways. Flanking the president were 4 Unumari guards, their lupine features set in professional masks of alertness. Their ceremonial armor couldn't hide the controlled power in their movements. These weren't just honor guards, but elite protectors. Lucan's tactical subroutines highlighted multiple weapon emplacements concealed within the gear. "Commander Torvath." The president's voice carried a hint of warmth, though it did not lack authority. "Welcome to our grand space station. We've been observing humanity's progress with great interest." Lucan executed a formal bow, the motion practiced to perfection. "High Counselor, we're honored by this opportunity to demonstrate humanity's readiness to join the galactic community." But readiness is precisely what some question." A new voice entered the conversation, smooth, yet carrying an edge of steel beneath its polish. Ambassador Niral of the Sakuri glided forward, his liquid metal skin flowing seamlessly with each step, reflecting the bay's lights in shifting patterns. Not much different from a living mirror. "Though we certainly appreciate your enthusiasm." Lucan's enhanced vision caught the subtle shift in the ambassador's stance, a micro-expression that his combat systems translated as a dismissive attitude. The Sakuri were humanoid in basic form, but their artificially improved biology was more in common with machines than carbon-based life. Their technological achievements were legendary, and their influence in the council nearly absolute. "The trials will speak for themselves, Ambassador," Liana responded smoothly, her diplomatic training evident. "We look forward to proving humanity's usefulness." The president raised a hand in a graceful gesture. "Indeed, you will. Come, we prepared a briefing on the trial protocols." He turned, his movement creating ripples in his strange garments that Lucan's sensors couldn't quite process properly. As they followed the delegation toward a grand archway, Lucan's AR lenses detected movement at the periphery of his vision. Tiny objects, no larger than insects, darted between the architectural features of the station. His targeting system automatically tracked them. Surveillance drones, dozens of them, their designs more advanced than anything in human databases. They seemed particularly interested in the human delegation, following their movements with great attention. The briefing chamber reflected the council's grandeur, with walls filled with statues of the member species. The president's aide, an Adarian with features as sharp and elegant as her superiors, began outlining the trial format. "Each species will demonstrate their shooting capabilities in controlled scenarios," she explained. "Technological innovation, biological advantages, all aspects will be evaluated by the full council." Lucan noted how the Sakuri ambassador's metallic form seemed to gleam at the mention of technological innovation. Their pride in their advanced status was well known, though something in the ambassador's bearing suggested more than mere technological superiority. More of those microscopic drones had followed them into the chamber, their movements too precise to be a random observation.
The demonstration order has been determined by random selection,
the aide continued, though Lucan's training flagged something artificial in her casual tone.
The human delegation will present last, 3 standard days from now.
Liana and Cade exchanged quick glances. Being last could either be an advantage or a serious handicap. Lucan's tactical systems were already calculating the implications, but his attention was divided between the briefing and the constant moving swarms of the surveillance drones, already bothering him with constant surveillance. They seemed to be mapping every detail of his combat armor, paying particular attention to his weapon systems.
Is everything satisfactory, Commander?
The President's question snapped Lucan's attention back to the briefing. Those ancient eyes seemed to hold centuries of diplomatic experience, reading reactions that most humans would have missed entirely.
Yes, High Counselor. We're eager to begin observation of the other demonstrations.
There's much we can learn from our potential future allies. Lucan kept his tone carefully neutral, though his enhanced vision continued surveying his surroundings.
Indeed,
Ambassador Neural interjected as his metallic skin reflected the light.
Learning is, after all, what separates civilized species from less developed ones.
The comment was perfectly diplomatic on the surface, but Lucan felt some derision in the Sakuri's voice. As the briefing concluded and they were led to their assigned quarters, Lucan maintained a passive scan of the surveillance drones. They were clearly of Sakuri design, given their sharing patterns with the artificial bodies. But their intense focus on the human delegation seemed excessive, even for a security-conscious species. His combat training was sending warning signals. Something about this attention felt predatory rather than cautionary. One thing was certain. The next 3 days would reveal whether humanity truly had a place among the stars, or if they were walking into something far more dangerous than a simple membership trial. The first day of demonstrations turned the station's main combat arena into a public showcase of galactic military prowess. From the narrow observation deck assigned to humanity, Lucan watched as species after species displayed weapons that stretched the limits of physics. His AR lenses logged technical specifications continuously, though some technologies remained beyond his system's ability to analyze. The Adarian demonstration featured large rifles that seemed to bend space itself. The President looked pleased for his species as their shots phased through solid matter before striking targets with seemingly magical precision. The furred Unamari displayed their famous splitting ammunition that could fragment into dozens of lethal submunitions mid-flight, not impressive to Lucan's high standards. Each presentation drew polite applause from the assembled diplomats, but everyone knew the real show would come from the Sakuri.
Impressed yet, Commander?
Ambassador Neural's voice carried that same patronizing tone as he approached their section.
Though I imagine these concepts might be challenging for human sensibilities to fully appreciate.
Liana shifted slightly beside Lucan, her diplomatic training barely concealing her irritation. Neural offered Liana a slow, almost predatory smile. His metallic face refracted the overhead lights, almost as if he were just made from liquid metal. Then, as if dismissing her importance entirely, he turned his head upward to the growing commotion on the demonstration floor. The lingering smirk on his lips suggested that his mind was already fixed on the Sakuri's upcoming display. Lucan easily ignored him, paying attention to what the other species were saying. Through his enhanced hearing, he caught fragments of whispered conversations from other delegations.
Barely managed FTL travel.
Primitive augmentation technology.
A mistake to invite them.
Noticing they were talking about humanity, a flicker of determination ignited behind Lucan's eyes. He straightened his shoulders, the slight tension in his jaw betraying a fierce resolve that surged within him. No matter how advanced these species were, he intended to show them that humanity was neither naive nor easily dismissed. Not even primitive, as they claimed. His mind remained focused on this. The Sakuri display began. It kicked off with a brilliant burst of light. Their sleek weaponry came to life in constant intervals, launching glowing projectiles that twisted and arced in breathtaking spirals. Each round shifted in bright colors, from deep emerald to vibrant magenta, leaving trails of afterimages. To the untrained eye, it was as though invisible hands were guiding every shot through the air.
detecting them around barriers and through narrow openings as if by sheer telekinetic force. The Security-made precision system, Neural announced proudly. It doesn't merely fire projectiles, but controls their trajectories with energy fields. All systems compact enough to fit into a backpack. The demonstration proved his words as the weapon struck targets that should have been physically impossible to hit, even curving shots around solid barriers. Lucan's lenses captured everything. But something about the Security's performance nagged at his tactical instincts. Their technology was undeniably impressive, yet there was an almost desperate quality to their showmanship. He adjusted his audio filters to focus on the Security, catching Neural speaking quietly to another official.
Let them see true advancement. Put these upstart humans in their place.
After finishing his comments, Neural turned to Lucan and smiled.
Enjoy the rest of the show, Commander,
he said with a parting grin, his metallic face contorting oddly.
Soon we'll see just how far humanity has truly come.
Without waiting for a reply, he turned and drifted toward a group of waiting council officials. His departure signaled an unofficial break in the Security demonstration, allowing Lucan and his companions a momentary respite from the spectacle and the scrutiny that surrounded them. The arena's obstacles were composed of thick, composite plating fashioned into twisting ramps, reinforced pillars, and latticed barricades. Even under the arena's overly dim lighting, the metallic sheen of each structure suggested resilience far exceeding standard alloys. As Lucan observed, his AR lenses flagged something unusual. Microscopic distortions along the arena's pillars, especially near the diplomatic observation areas. The readings aligned with the surveillance drones he had detected earlier, but their behavior had shifted. Now, they were camouflaged to blend seamlessly with the arena's colors, making them nearly invisible to the naked eye.
Liana,
he said quietly through their neural link.
Don't react.
But we got company. 3 o'clock, about 2 meters above your head. She maintained her conversation with an Unumari delegate, but her pulse quickened slightly on her biomonitors. A cluster of nearly invisible drones had gathered unusually close to her position, their movement patterns suggesting more than simple surveillance. Neural only smiled from a distance when Lucan glanced at him, and he felt a pang of alarm ripple through his body. He had assumed that his covert scans would go undetected, given the sophistication of current human-made sensors. Yet, Neural's smile suggested that the Security ambassador had seen right through his attempts to gather more data. As a group of ambassadors glided away, Lucan's sensors detected a subtle shift in the drone swarm's formation. They were no longer simply observing. They were flying in dangerous patterns provocatively close to the human delegation. His targeting systems highlighted dozens of possible trajectories, all centered around him and his companions, as if the Security were sending a thinly veiled threat. Lucan clenched his fists and smiled bitterly at Liana and Cade. Humanity's trial was quickly becoming something far more dangerous than a simple membership evaluation. 2 standard days later, Lucan stood alone on the shooting platform, its polished wooden surface smooth under his boots. His black combat armor now replaced the formal clothing he had worn upon his arrival at the space station. Behind him, Liana and Cade watched from their small observation deck, while to his side, the grand diplomatic viewing area hosted the Council's elite. The Unumari's fur inflated like a puffer fish, the Security's metallic forms as reflective as ever, and High Counselor Valin stood tall and regal above them all. Valin's voice carried across the arena from his reserved position.
Today marks a historic moment. Humanity stands before us, seeking to join our Galactic Council. Their performance in these trials will determine whether they are ready to take their place among the stars.
His words lingered in the air, met with polite yet restrained commemoration that barely concealed the skepticism permeating the chamber.
Release the targets,
the President commanded, and hundreds of small, glowing drones scattered across the arena's maze, their movements creating bright patterns against the plentiful objects and barriers. Lucan lowered himself to the ground, the familiar weight of the Barrett M82 settling against his shoulder. The weapon might have seemed archaic to the energy weapons displayed earlier, but as he loaded the smart bullets, his AR lenses transformed the world into a sea of possibilities. Countless firing solutions appeared before him, each bullet's potential path calculated and displayed in blue, yellow, and red lines.
The trial begins in 3.
Lucan's breathing slowed, his augmented heart rate adjusting automatically.
2.
his lenses focused on the nearest glowing target, environmental data streaming through his consciousness.
1.
Time seemed to compress as he squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, the smart bullet racing towards its target, and impossibly missed. The crowd murmured as Lucan instantly replayed the trajectory in his mind. The bullet's path had deviated by a centimeter, just enough to fail. His sensors reported nothing unusual, but years of combat experience screamed that something was wrong. Following his instincts, Lucan adjusted his AR lens's parameters, tweaking the standard protocols for data filtering. Suddenly, new signatures blazed across his vision. Hundreds of Security drones, their camouflage much better than before, hovering around the arena. One had intercepted his shot with a subtle energy pulse, too brief and weak for normal detection. A cold smile touched his lips as he shifted his aim. The smart bullet connected with his neural interface, and time seemed to slow. His augmented perception captured every detail. The bullet's spin rate, air resistance variables, local gravity fluctuations. The projectile curved around a barrier, altered its trajectory by exactly 27.3 degrees, and shattered one of the hidden Security drones into microscopic fragments.
A miss!
The Adarian president's voice carried across the chamber, failing to realize Lucan had destroyed a hidden target, not the official one.
Perhaps human targeting systems aren't quite as advanced as claimed.
Too spiteful because of the Security interference, Lucan ignored that comment, already lining up his next shot. His AR lenses painted a complex web of trajectories, accounting for the movement of both the official targets and the concealed drones. Another shot rang out, appearing to miss wildly, while actually threading between 3 obstacles to eliminate another hidden drone.
The human seems to be struggling with basic target acquisition,
An Unamari delegate observed, amusement clear in their tone. The Barrett's song echoed again and again. Each apparent miss was a precision strike against the Security's hidden network of drones. Lucan's neural processors worked overtime, calculating impossible shots that curved around corners, ricocheted off surfaces, and found their marks with devastating accuracy.
Perhaps we should consider ending this demonstration early,
suggested an Adarian official, his voice thick with diplomatic concern. The only ambassador that was silent was Dural, whose smile had faded after so many of his drones were destroyed in a row. Meanwhile, Lucan's targeting system identified a particularly dense cluster of hidden drones near the diplomatic viewing area. Their position wasn't random. They were slowly forming an attack pattern. His next shot appeared to go completely off target, drawing disappointed sighs from the audience, but actually split into many sub-munitions that disabled 6 drones simultaneously.
A disappointment,
the president declared loudly.
Though perhaps we ought not to expect too much.
Another shot cut through his words, seeming to waste itself against a barrier while actually eliminating 3 more drones that had been maneuvering close to the president's position. Lucan's lips twitched in satisfaction as the sensors detected increasing agitation in the Security's movements. With each passing minute, he methodically dismantled their drones while maintaining the appearance of an embarrassing performance. His AR lens tracked the destruction. 20 drones, 50, 70. The Security grew angrier at each passing moment, and Lucan could only smile at them, going as far as giving Neural the finger amidst his shots.
I believe we've seen enough,
the president began, but Lucan was already tracking the final cluster of drones. The audience's silence was heavy with presumed judgment, but Lucan allowed himself a small smile as he rose from his position. His mission had been completed. Not a single target hit, but every hidden drone eliminated. Liana's voice came through his neural link, tense with concern.
Lucan, what happened out there?
I'll explain later. He responded silently, his eyes fixed on Ambassador Neural's increasingly rigid posture.
But I think someone might be angry.
Neural's metallic face contorted with barely contained rage. His fingers moved in fluid motions like a conductor leading an invisible orchestra. Lucan's enhanced vision caught the subtle gestures, and his combat systems immediately flagged new signatures. Another swarm of drones, pouring through a maintenance door that had silently slid open.
Here we go again,
Lucan muttered, dropping back into shooting position. His initial assumption was that the Security were targeting the human delegation, but his targeting systems quickly painted a different picture. The swarm's trajectory curved elegantly toward the presidential platform. The Barrett roared as Lucan engaged the first cluster. The shot appeared to sail past the president's position by several meters, drawing immediate reactions.
He's shooting at the president!
An Adarian official shouted, his sharp features twisted in alarm as he and the others raised a multi-layered energy shield to protect the president. Since they were so confident in their shields and had not raised their guns at him, Lucan ignored them, already tracking the next target. 3 more shots rang out in rapid succession, each seemingly missing any visible target. The Unumari guards moved to protect the president, their fur bristling with agitation.
Stand down, human!
One of them barked.
Your poor marksmanship is endangering the High Counselor!
A lupine diplomat chuffed what might have been a laugh.
If this is an assassination attempt, it is the worst I've ever seen. He couldn't hit the broadside of a cargo hauler.
Lucan's AR lenses tracked another formation of cloaked drones moving into attack position. His next shot ricocheted off 2 surfaces before splitting into submunitions, neutralizing an entire cluster. To the observers, it looked like another embarrassing miss that nearly struck a decorative wall panel.
This is outrageous!
An Adarian official declared.
First he fails the demonstration, and now he...
The official's words cut off as one of the security drones flickered, briefly visible. Its camouflage disrupted by Lucan's last shot. The moment was brief, but others had seen it. Murmurs of confusion replaced the previous condemnation. Neral's movements became more frantic. His conductor's gestures increasingly desperate as he tried to maintain control of his drone swarm. Lucan's sensors detected power signatures spiking in the remaining units. They were preparing to strike. Another shot thundered through the chamber. This time, a drone's destruction was visible to all, its fragments catching the light as they scattered across the floor. The Unumari guards' ears prickled forward, their tactical systems finally detecting the threats that they had missed.
There's something else here,
one of them growled, scanning the air with newly adjusted sensors. Lucan maintained his pace, each shot finding another target. The Sakuri ambassador's face had lost its metallic sheen, taking on a dull, ashen quality as his plan unraveled. The remaining drones began to move erratically, their coordinated attack pattern dissolving into chaos. A particularly well-placed shot detonated a drone directly in front of the president's position, its destruction revealing 2 more behind it. High Counselor Valin's ancient eyes narrowed as understanding dawned.
Hold your fire!
The president commanded, but not to Lucan. His gaze fixed on the security delegation.
Ambassador Neral, would you care to explain why your drones are targeting me?
The chamber fell silent, except for the continuing report of Lucan's rifle as he eliminated the remaining threats. Neral's metallic features had frozen in an expression of barely contained panic.
High Counselor, I can explain.
Neral began, but another drone detonation cut him off. This one close enough to his position to scatter the fragments across his metallic skin.
I believe,
the president's voice carried the weight of centuries of authority,
that our human friend has been defending this chamber while we stood here casting accusations.
He turned to Lucan, who was tracking the last few drones.
Rather impressive shooting, Commander. Particularly for someone who appeared to be missing every target.
Lucan's only response was another shot. Another drone eliminated. The few remaining security units began to retreat, their movements panicked and uncoordinated without Neral's guidance.
It seems,
the president continued, watching Neral with ancient, knowing eyes,
that humanity's capabilities goes beyond my initial assessment. And perhaps more importantly, their loyalty was proven while others plotted betrayal.
The Unumari guards had surrounded the security delegation, their weapons drawn. Neral's metallic form seemed to shrink under the combined scrutiny of the chamber's occupants, his stance that of someone who wouldn't surrender without a fight. Still, Lucan lowered his rifle, allowing himself a moment of pause as he watched the guards surround Neral as he reloaded his rifle. Through his Neuralink, he heard Liana's relieved sigh, though his own senses were still vigilant.
Next time,
she said privately.
Maybe warn me before you start shooting near the president.
Would have spoiled the surprise, Lucan replied, his targeting system still tracking their surroundings. Besides, I don't think our council application is in trouble anymore. Meanwhile, metal screamed against metal as Neral's form shifted, his surface rippling like quicksilver. Before the Unumari guards could react, more Sakuri warriors flooded through the arena's main entrance. The same troops from the earlier demonstration, each equipped with the compact backpacks capable of bending projectiles' trajectories.
Security lockdown!
The president's voice rang out immediately. Barrier fields came to life across the chamber's exits, but it was too late. Dozens of Security warriors had already taken positions throughout the arena, their metallic forms gleaming under the crimson emergency lights now flooding the chamber.
A coup d'etat?
An Adarian counselor whispered, their pale features tight with anger. The Unamari diplomats growled low in their throats, their fur bristling as they moved to shield their leaders. Lucan was already moving. His combat systems calculated the odds. 37 Security warriors against the handful of Council security forces. The numbers weren't good, but he'd faced worse. The Barrett rifle's smart bullets synced with his AR lenses as he took aim at the nearest cluster of enemies.
Liana, Kate.
He transmitted through their neural link. Remember your combat training?
Seriously? It came to this?
Cade replied, drawing a compact pistol from beneath his suit jacket. Liana revealed her own weapon, her diplomatic poise shifting into a flawless combat stance. The first shot caught the Security off guard. They had clearly expected surrender. The smart bullets curved around a barrier, split into 3 submunitions, and disabled 2 warriors' backpack systems in a shower of sparks. Before they could react, Lucan had already chambered another round.
Not enough!
A Security warrior called out, raising their weapon. Energy fields warped the air as they prepared to redirect any incoming fire. But Lucan had studied their tricks during the demonstration. His next shot went low, ricocheting off the floor at a sharp angle to take out another backpack. Liana and Cade added suppressing fire from the observation deck. Their shots less precise, but effective enough to force the Security to divide their attention.
Protect the council members!
An Unamari guard captain barked, rallying his troops. The guards moved into formation, their fur-covered forms flowing like water between positions. Traditional weapons combined the Lucan's precision fire and an unexpectedly effective synergy. The Security's advantage in numbers meant little in the confined space, their own energy field technology backfiring as redirected shots struck their allies. Lucan's targeting system tracked each backpack and every potential ricochet surface, weaving a complex web of possibilities.
The humans...
An Adarian counselor murmured, their tone laced with growing appreciation.
Not bad.
Chaos erupted across the chamber as the Security formation began to collapse. But Lucan's focus narrowed to a single target. Neural was trying to slip away in the confusion, his metallic form blending with that of his allies. The Barrett's song echoed once more, a smart bullet curving through the Security ranks and disabling Neural's personal shield generator.
Impressive.
Neural snarled, his form shifting again as new weapons emerged from his liquid metal surface.
But your species still doesn't understand true power! You lack!
Lucan cut him off with another shot, perfectly timed to detonate after piercing Neural's core. The explosion sent the ambassador sprawling, his form churning violently as he fell even before deploying his weapons.
Perhaps we lack whatever you were saying.
Lucan stepped closer.
But we at least understand that delivering moral lessons mid-battle is not a smart move.
Around them, the tide of battle had turned decisively. Without their ambassador's leadership and with their backpack systems systematically destroyed, the remaining Security warriors began to surrender. The Unamari guards moved in to secure them, their earlier skepticism of humanity forgotten.
Stand down!
The president's voice carried an unassailable authority.
The combat arena is secured. Ambassador Neral and all Security forces are hereby detained under Council authority.
Neral, while his form was still partially frozen mid-transformation, was quickly led away by the Unamari, who didn't seem particularly concerned about his internal wounds. The president's ancient eyes swept the chamber, taking in the aftermath. Damaged barriers, scattered weapon fragments, and the unmistakable respect now etched on the faces of the other species as they regarded the human delegation.
We will convene an emergency council session,
he announced gravely.
The Security delegation will face questioning about this betrayal. And...
He turned to Lucan, Liana, and Cade, his gaze steady.
We will also discuss humanity's unexpected demonstration of combat prowess and loyalty to Council principles.
Liana stepped forward, seamlessly transitioning back to her diplomatic role despite the pistol still held carefully at her side.
The Council honors us with this opportunity.
Indeed,
the President replied, a hint of amusement flickering across his ancient features.
Though I suspect this was not quite the demonstration any of us expected today.
As Security forces began processing the detained Security, Lucan kept his rifle ready, his AR lenses scanning for lingering threats. The day's events had shifted the political landscape dramatically, but experience had taught him that such moments were often the most dangerous.
Stop being so paranoid.
Liana whispered through their neural link.
We won.
Lucan allowed himself a small smile as he watched Neural being led away. We survived the first round, he corrected. Council politics might be more dangerous than combat.
That is for you,
Liana's voice carried a hint of warmth.
but for me, it will be my moment to shine.
The Council's emergency chambers felt smaller than the combat arena, its circular table dominated by the remaining species leaders. Emergency lighting still cast everything in a reddish glow, reminding the delegates of the betrayal that had just happened. Scorch marks on some of the diplomats' clothing served as fresh reminders of the recent combat. Lucan stood behind Liana's chair, his combat armor still displaying battle damage. His AR lenses continued scanning the room out of habit, though the Unamari guards had thoroughly swept for any remaining threats. Cade flanked Liana's other side, his usual nervous energy replaced by a calm focus. The Unamari delegation's fur had finally settled, though their ears remained alert. The Adarian representatives sat straighter than before. Their sharp features softened somewhat when looking at the human delegation. The President's ancient eyes moved between them all, reading the room's shifting dynamics.
The interview with Ambassador Neural was illuminating.
The President began, his ancient form catching the red emergency lights.
Under questioning, he revealed what many of us suspected. The Security's actions were driven by fear. Fear of humanity's rapid advancement. Fear of losing their technological dominance. Fear of change itself.
Liana leaned forward slightly.
Fear often drives us to our worst decisions.
Indeed.
The President's robes flowed in what might have been appreciation.
The Security believed that by framing humanity for an assassination attempt, they could prevent Earth's admission to the Council and maintain their position. Instead, they have demonstrated precisely why such position should not be maintained.
A holographic display materialized above the table, showing Neural's confession. The Ambassador's metallic features were locked in an expression of defeat as his words played out.
We saw their growth rate. In 50 years, they went from primitive chemical propulsion to viable FTL. In another 50, all those cybernetics enhancers. We couldn't allow more of it.
The President gestured, and the hologram dissolved.
Effective immediately, the Security Confederation will enter a period of political isolation. Their seats on all council committees will be suspended, their trade routes closed, their technological exchanges halted.
The Unamari leader's fur rippled in approval.
A fitting response to an assassination attempt. Which brings us,
the President continued,
to the matter of humanity's status.
He turned to face Liana directly.
Your species came here to demonstrate readiness for Council membership. Instead, you demonstrated something far more valuable. Integrity under fire. Loyalty to principles not yet sworn to. Courage in defense of others.
The Adarian representatives nodded in agreement. Their earlier skepticism completely vanished.
The human warrior's precision was impressive, one offered, both in combat and in restraint. Therefore,
the President's voice took on a formal tone.
I propose an immediate vote on Earth's admission to the Galactic Council. The timing may feel rushed to some, but I believe it sends a necessary message about our values and how we reward those who uphold them.
The vote was quick and unanimous. Liana maintained her diplomatic composure, but Lucan's enhanced vision caught the slight tremor in her hands as she accepted the official documentation. Humanity's first interstellar alliance.
Congratulations, Ambassador,
the President said, rising from his seat. His form seemed to flow upward rather than simply stand.
Earth's voice will be a valuable addition to our deliberations.
Liana rose as well, then surprised Lucan by reaching back and grabbing his hand.
The commander should be in the official record too,
she said, pulling him forward.
This victory belongs to all of humanity.
Lucan allowed himself to be drawn into the formal recording, though he would have preferred to avoid a picture. The President's ancient eyes crinkled with what might have been amusement as he observed the interaction. At last, the picture was taken, marking humanity's first step toward becoming a galactic power.